The smell of rust and damp filled the air. Water dripped slowly from the cracked ceiling, each drop echoing in the silent hall. In the far corner, behind thick iron bars, an alien slave sat curled up, knees against his chest. His skin was pale and thin, almost gray, and his eyes stared blankly at the floor. Around his neck was a black metal collar with tiny red lights. The device that had stolen his voice years ago. He had stopped counting the days. Time had no meaning here. The guards came only to throw stale bread and dirty water through the bars. Never speaking to him, in this place, no one spoke to him. He was not a person to them, just a thing he had once dreamed of escaping. He had imagined running under an open sky, feeling wind on his face, hearing his own voice again, but years in the dark had killed those dreams. Now he simply waited. Not for freedom, but for the end. Tonight felt no different at first. The torches on the walls burned low, shadows crawling along the stones. Somewhere far above, thunder rumbled. The sound of footsteps came suddenly. Heavy and fast, the alien did not move. Many prisoners had been brought through here before, and none ever stayed for long. 2 alien guards appeared, dragging a man between them. He was taller than they were, with blood on his face and a torn uniform. His hands were chained in front of him, but his eyes burned with defiance. The guards opened the cage next to the slave and threw the man inside. The door clanged shut, the lock turning with a sharp click. For a moment, the alien slave did not look at him. New prisoners were just shadows that came and went. But then he felt the man's eyes on him. Slowly, he turned his head. The human was staring at him, not with disgust, not with fear, but with something strange. Recognition, maybe, or determination. The human wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "You've been here a while," he said quietly. The alien did not reply. He could not. He touched the collar at his throat, shaking his head slightly. The human's eyes narrowed, as if he understood. He shifted closer to the bars between them, lowering his voice. "I'm getting you out of here." The alien blinked slowly. No one had ever said that to him before. His heart wanted to believe, but his mind told him it was a lie. Everyone who tried to escape ended up dead. The guards had no mercy. The sound of laughter came from the corridor. The guards were standing there, watching them with cruel grins. One of them banged his spear against the bars, making the alien flinch, talking to the ghost. The guard mocked. "He can't help you, human. Soon you'll be just like him." The guards walked away, their laughter echoing down the hall. The human waited until their steps faded, then leaned closer. "They think I'm staying here," he whispered, "but I'm not, and neither are you." The alien shook his head. Pointing at the collar, the human glanced at it and frowned. "What is that?" The alien mimed a cutting motion across his neck. The human's jaw tightened. Explosive. The alien nodded once. The human sat back, thinking. He looked tired, beaten, but not broken. "Then we'll find a way to remove it," he said at last. The alien stared at him in disbelief. He had seen many humans in this prison before, but none like this one. Most cried, begged, or gave up within hours. This one was already planning. In the far distance, a bell rang. The sound meant the guards were changing shifts. The human leaned against the cold bars, speaking low. "Tomorrow? I'll need you to be ready. No matter what happens, don't give up. Do you understand?" The alien's hands trembled. He didn't know why he nodded, but he did. Maybe it was the way the human spoke, with a voice that felt like fire in the cold. Maybe it was because, for the first time in years, someone had looked at him as if he mattered. The human gave a faint smile. "Good," he said, "because I'm not leaving you behind." In the corner, the alien pulled his knees closer, his mind torn between hope and fear. The night stretched on, silent except for the occasional drip of water and the quiet breathing of the human in the next cage. Somewhere deep inside, a part of him that had been silent for years stirred, a tiny spark that whispered maybe, just maybe. This time would be different, and as the torches flickered low, the alien could not stop glancing at the man who had promised the impossible. The first light of morning barely touched the prison walls, yet the cold was already biting into their bones. The alien slave sat awake. Watching the human in the next cage, he had barely slept, his mind replaying the words from last night, "I'm not leaving you behind." No one had ever said such a thing to him, and part of him feared it was just another cruel hope that would break. The human stirred, his eyes opening slowly but sharply, as if he was used to waking in danger. He glanced at the alien and gave the smallest nod. It was not a greeting, it was a signal. Somewhere inside, the alien understood. The guards came with the morning rations, if it could be called that, one stale loaf and a jug of cloudy water tossed into each cell. When the jug rolled too close to the bars, the alien saw the human's hand dart out and slip something into his palm before pulling the jug inside. It was a tiny sliver of metal, no bigger than a nail. The alien's eyes widened. The human's face gave away nothing. He just tore off a piece of bread and ate it as though nothing had happened. Hours passed in slow misery. Chains rattled in the far cells as prisoners shifted in their cages from somewhere above. The sound of boots echoed down the stone corridors. The alien glanced toward the main gate, noting how the guards changed posts again. The human's eyes were watching too. Every movement, every habit of the guards seemed to be a piece of a puzzle only he could see. When the cell block fell into its usual midday silence, the human moved closer to the bars. He lowered his voice, until it was only a breath. "I need to know how long have you been here?" The alien hesitated, then held up his fingers, counting slowly. 8. The human's eyes hardened. 8 years, he repeated under his breath. Too long. The alien tapped the collar, a silent reminder. The human reached into his sleeve and showed another sliver of metal, longer and sharper than the first. His voice was calm, almost casual. "If I can get this thing off you, will you trust me?" The alien froze. Trust, here, was dangerous. But when he looked into the human's eyes, he saw no mockery, no greed, only intent. Slowly, he nodded. That night, when the torches dimmed, the human made his move. With the precision of someone who had worked with machines before, he slid the sliver of metal into the tiny seams of the collar. The alien's breathing quickened. Every click of the metal against the collar sounded louder than it should. A single mistake could trigger the device and end him instantly. From down the corridor, faint footsteps approached. The human didn't stop. "Almost there," he whispered. The alien's pulse pounded in his ears. He could see the shadow of a guard stretching across the wall. Closer, closer, the collar gave a faint spark. And for the first time in years, the alien felt air against the skin of his neck without the weight of the device. But before relief could settle, the human slid the collar under his shirt and stepped back as the guard appeared. The guard's gaze swept over the cages but lingered on them for only a second before moving on. When he was gone, the alien's hands trembled as he touched the bare skin at his throat. It was almost impossible to believe. The human didn't smile. "We're not done," he said softly. "They'll notice it's gone soon, and when they do, we have one chance to move." The alien swallowed hard. For the first time in years, he could have spoken, but the shock, the fear, the rush of what just happened held his voice hostage. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a long buried part of him whispered that the first chain had just been broken. The human sat back against the cold wall, his eyes fixed on the shadows beyond the bars. The alien lay awake long after, feeling a strange weight in his chest. It wasn't fear. Not entirely. It was the dangerous, fragile thing he had tried to kill inside himself years ago, hope. The air in the prison felt heavier that night, as if the stones themselves were holding their breath. The alien sat in the corner of his cage, his bare throat still strange to him without the collar's cold weight. Every time he touched his skin, it felt like a dream across the bars. The human leaned against the wall, eyes closed but not sleeping. He was waiting, listening, counting each step the guards took. When the last patrol passed, the human shifted closer. "Tonight we test the route," he whispered. The alien's eyes narrowed in question. The human pointed toward the far end of the cell block, where a dark corridor led into the lower tunnels. "3 guards," he said. "2 asleep, 1 drunk. If we can get past them, we'll know if the path works." The alien's pulse raced. Escaping was not a thought that belonged in this place. It was dangerous to even imagine it. But the human spoke as if it was already decided, as if there was no world in which they stayed here. The human reached through the bars and pressed something into the alien's hand. It was a jagged shard of metal, heavier than it looked. "For the locks," he said. The alien's fingers closed around it, feeling its edge bite into his palm. It was the first weapon he had held in years. They moved when the torches flickered low. The human's cage door opened with a soft click. He stepped out, moving like a shadow across the stone floor. The alien followed, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure the guards could hear it. They slipped past the first 2 guards, their heads slumped forward in drunken sleep. The human's movements were precise, controlled. He was not guessing he had done this before, in other places. In other prisons, when they reached the last guard, the alien froze. The man was awake, his eyes half open, the spear in his hand tapping the ground in a slow rhythm. The human glanced at the alien and then moved forward without hesitation. In one swift motion, he grabbed the guard's head and slammed it against the wall. The sound was muffled. The guard crumpled. Unconscious, the alien stared, shocked. It was not the violence that startled him, it was the certainty, the skill, the way the human did not falter. They reached the end of the corridor. A heavy iron door blocked their path. Its lock, ancient and rusted. The alien crouched, sliding the shard into the mechanism. His hands shook. But the memory of working metal came back to him in fragments. It took longer than he wanted, but finally, with a soft scrape, the lock gave way. The door opened onto a stairwell that spiraled downward into darkness. A wave of damp, cold air rolled up from below. The human stepped in first, testing each step, before putting his weight on it. Halfway down, they heard the sound faint, distant, but unmistakable. An alarm bell. Its metallic cry echoed through the stone. The alien's chest tightened. Someone had discovered their empty cages. The human grabbed his arm and pulled him. Faster, they ran into the tunnels, the walls closing in on either side. Behind them, the shouts of guards grew louder. The human glanced over his shoulder. "We're not caught yet," he said, his voice steady even as their footsteps splashed through cold water. But the path ahead suddenly split into 3 narrow passages, each disappearing into blackness. The human paused for only a second before choosing the left. The alien followed. His breath ragged, the tunnel bent sharply, and for a moment, it seemed they had shaken pursuit till a shadow moved ahead. Blocking their way, it was not a guard. It was something larger, heavier. With eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, the human stepped in front of the alien, one hand going to the shard in his pocket. The creature growled low, the sound vibrating through the stone. The alien's throat felt tight, his voice finally ready to return after years of silence. It came out as a hoarse whisper, one word: "Run." The dark creature's low growl filled the narrow tunnel, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The alien's heart pounded loud in his chest. He saw the human grip the jagged shard tighter, eyes scanning for any weakness. the creatures. Glowing eyes locked on them, ready to strike. Suddenly, the human lunged forward. Slashing with the shard, the creature howled and swung a massive arm. The human dodged just in time. The cold stone scraping his skin, the alien wanted to help, but his legs felt frozen with fear. The fight was brutal and quick. The human dodged blow after blow, striking at the creature's legs and sides. Blood darkened the cold floor. Finally, the creature staggered and crashed into the tunnel wall. It groaned and slumped, defeated but alive. They didn't wait to see if it would rise again. The human grabbed the alien's arm and pulled him deeper into the tunnels. Breathing hard, they ran. Behind them, distant shouts and heavy footsteps echoed, the guards closing in fast. The tunnels twisted and turned. Narrow passages opening into wider halls. The alien's breath came in gasps. But he kept moving, trusting the human's lead. They came to a rusted metal ladder leading up. The human climbed first, then helped the alien up at the top. A small grate opened into a forgotten storage room. Inside, old crates and broken tools lay scattered. The human pushed the grate closed softly behind them, muffling the sounds of pursuit. The alien sank against a crate, chest rising and falling. For the first time, he dared to look at the human with more than fear. "You saved me," he whispered, voice rough and strange after so long silent. The human shook his head. Wiping sweat from his brow, "We're not safe yet," he said, "but we're closer." Outside, alarms blared louder, lights flashing through cracks in the walls. The prison was awake and angry. They would have only minutes before guards swarmed. The tunnels, the human pulled out a small map, worn and folded. "Here," he said, pointing, "is the old service exit, a forgotten door under the east tower." The alien nodded, hope rising despite the danger. They moved again, slipping through shadows. Avoiding patrols and broken stairways, every sound made the alien jump. Every whisper of wind sounded like a warning. Suddenly, they heard a shout behind them. The human grabbed the alien and pulled him into a dark alcove. 2 guards ran past, shouting orders, unaware of the prisoners hiding so close. The alien's legs trembled. But the human held him steady. "We're almost there." The human said quietly, "Stay close." They slipped out of the alcove and hurried down the final corridor. Ahead, a heavy door stood between them and freedom. The alien's fingers touched the cold metal handle. The human knelt. Pulling out another tool to pick the lock, seconds felt like hours. The lock clicked open. The door creaked as it swung outward to a narrow stairwell. Light spilled in from above, fresh and real. They climbed quickly, steps pounding. The air grew warmer. Birds called in the distance, strange and wild. When they burst out into the fresh air, the alien gasped. The sky stretched wide and endless. Freedom tasted sweet but fragile. But before they could celebrate, a shout came from behind. The alien turned to see the warlord of the prison standing at the stairwell entrance. His armor glinted cruelly. His eyes burned with fury. The human stepped in front of the alien. Ready to fight, the warlord laughed, a deep, cold sound. "You think you can leave?" he sneered. "No one escapes my prison." The alien swallowed hard, but the human's voice was steady. "We will," he said, "or die trying." The warlord's laugh echoed through the open space, cold and sharp like a blade. He stepped forward, towering over them, his heavy armor clinking with every move. The alien's breath caught in his throat, but the human stood firm, eyes locked. On the enemy, without warning, the warlord lunged. Swinging a massive mace that could crush bones, the human dodged, barely. Rolling to the side on the rough ground, he pulled the jagged shard from his pocket, gripping it tightly, ready to fight. The battle was fierce and fast, each blow ringing through the clearing. The alien watched, heart pounding. Wanting to help, but knowing his strength was gone, the human moved like a shadow, quick and precise, using every bit of skill he had. At one point, the warlord caught the human's arm, twisting it with brutal force. Pain flashed across the human's face. But he didn't give up. With a sudden twist, he freed himself and stabbed the shard deep into the warlord's side. The warlord roared in anger, staggering back, blood seeping from the wound, but he was far from defeated, and he charged again. More furious than before, the human braced, ready for the next strike. Suddenly, the alien stepped forward. Surprising himself and the warlord, he grabbed a fallen branch, heavy and rough, and swung with all his might. The warlord's eyes widened in shock as the branch hit his helmet, staggering him. "Go!" the alien shouted, voice rough but strong. "Run now!" The human didn't hesitate, grabbing the alien's arm, and together they ran toward the edge of the clearing. Behind them, the warlord bellowed in rage, but his steps faltered. The branch strike had given them a chance, a brief moment to escape. They ran through thick bushes and broken trees, the sounds of pursuit growing distant. The alien's breath came fast, but his heart was filled with hope for the first time in years. Beside him, the human's grip was steady, a promise of protection and friendship. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden among the rocks. They collapsed inside, hiding in the shadows. Bodies shaking with exhaustion, the alien looked at the human, eyes shining with gratitude and something else, determination. "You saved me," he said softly. "Now I will save you." The human smiled weakly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We're not safe yet," he said, "but together we have a chance." Outside, the night was calm, stars shining brightly above. But the warlord's anger would not fade, and their fight was far from over. The cave was silent except for the sound of their breathing. The alien sat against the cold stone wall, still feeling the heat of battle in his chest. The human crouched near the entrance, watching the darkness outside for any sign of movement. Neither spoke for a long while, both knowing that words could give away their position. Hours passed, the air growing colder. At one point, the human turned, his voice low. "We can't stay here when the sun rises." The alien nodded slowly, his voice still rough. "They'll come for us." The human studied the ground, tracing shapes in the dirt with his finger. "I know a way to reach the trade routes," he whispered. "If we can make it there, we'll blend in with the caravans." The alien frowned. "Caravans won't help us," he said quietly. "Warlord controls them." The human's jaw tightened. "Then we take what we need and disappear before anyone notices." Before they could speak further, a faint crunch came from outside footsteps, slow and careful. The human motioned for silence, pressing his back to the wall. Shadows moved at the cave's entrance, tall and shifting. The alien's heart raced. For a moment, he thought it was the warlord, but the figure that stepped into view was smaller. Cloaked and moving with hesitation, a soft voice spoke in the alien's language. You escaped." The alien froze, recognizing the voice. It was an old prisoner, someone who had vanished months ago. The figure lowered their hood, revealing a scarred face and tired eyes. "They sent hunters after you," the old prisoner warned. "If you stay on this side of the mountains, you won't see another sunrise." The human stepped forward. "Then we go over them," he said firmly. The old prisoner's eyes widened. "No one survives. The passage frozen, steep, and full of beasts." The alien glanced at the human, expecting him to hesitate, but the human's expression didn't change. "That's why they won't look for us there," he said. It was madness, but it was also their best chance. The alien swallowed hard, knowing what it meant to travel those mountains, knowing they might die there, but he also knew the alternative was chains and darkness again. The old prisoner pressed something into the human's hand, a small pouch of dried food. "For the road," they whispered. "I owe you both nothing. But I hate him too." Without another word, the figure slipped back into the night. Vanishing into the trees, the human and alien didn't waste time. They left the cave before dawn. Moving toward the jagged peaks in the distance, cold wind bit at their skin, carrying the scent of snow. Every step felt like a step away from the warlord's reach, but also toward a place no sane man would go. By midday, they reached the base of the mountains. The rocks were sharp, the path uneven. Snow clung to every surface, and the higher they climbed, the harder the wind pushed against them. The alien's legs burned with the effort. But he kept going, matching the human's pace. They stopped only once, hiding in the shadow of a cliff. From there, they could see the valley below, the warlord's hunting party spreading out like ants, searching every inch of land. The human's voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "They're closer than I thought." The alien looked at him. "If they find us here?" The human didn't answer. Instead, he adjusted the strap of the small pack on his shoulder and started climbing again. The alien followed, teeth clenched against the cold. Neither spoke, but both knew the truth. This path would decide if they lived or died. Snow whipped across their faces as they climbed higher, the wind howling like a living thing. The alien's fingers were numb, his legs aching with every step. Behind them, far in the valley, the warlord's hunters were just dark specks now. But they were still moving, still following. The human led the way, carving a path through knee-deep drifts, never slowing even when the climb grew steeper. The sky above was a dull gray, heavy with more snow to come. Every breath burned in their lungs. Every gust of wind stole what little warmth they had left. The alien stumbled once, falling to his knees. The human was there instantly, pulling him up without a word, his grip steady and sure. They pressed on until the world seemed to disappear into white. No trees, no rocks, just endless snow and wind. Then, through the haze, the alien saw it, a narrow gap between two jagged cliffs. The human pointed toward it. "That's the pass," he shouted over the storm. "Once we're through, we're free." The alien wanted to believe, but the pass looked like nothing more than a death trap. Still, he followed, trusting the human's steps halfway through. A sudden movement made him stop. From the shadows of the cliffs, two massive shapes emerged, beasts covered in thick white fur, their eyes glowing faintly in the storm. The human stepped in front of the alien, pulling the jagged shard from his belt. The beasts snarled, moving closer, their paws silent on the snow. The alien's mind screamed at him to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The first beast lunged. The human met it head-on, driving the shard deep into its neck. It fell back, thrashing, but the second beast was already on him. The alien didn't think. He grabbed a broken length of wood, half buried in the snow, and swung with all his strength. The wood cracked against the beast's skull, sending it stumbling away. The human seized the moment, pulling the alien toward the other end of the pass. They ran, the storm closing in around them, the beast's roars fading behind. When they finally broke through the cliffs, the wind seemed to soften. Below them stretched a valley untouched by the warlord's reach, quiet and open under the pale winter sun. The alien stopped, breathing hard, staring at the vast free land before them. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Then, in a voice still rough but steady, he said, "You gave everything to save me." The human looked at him, a faint smile on his lips. "And I'd do it again." They began the descent together, step by step, leaving the shadows of the mountains behind for the first time in years. The alien felt the weight of chains truly gone. He didn't know what waited for them in the valley, but he knew one thing: he would never let the man who freed him stand alone. The wind carried their footprints away almost as quickly as they made them. By the time the warlord's hunters reached the pass, there would be no trace. Only two figures, walking toward a new dawn.